Hi there, I'm Tracy Guest, author of the Moyamoya Mom blog, and I have a correction to make. In my first video or my second video, I said that you could find that at moyamoyamom.com. It's actually .net, so moyamoyamom.net. And I will be updating that blog, just so you know. Okay, but a lot of it it's great information. I talk about different diseases that I have or health conditions, and Moyamoya, of course. And there's lots of links to other pages where I got my information from, and so definitely you can definitely check that out. Okay, alrighty. So today I'm going to tell you about what Moyamoya disease is, just in case you're new and you just don't know what it is. Okay, so basically Moyamoya disease affects the arteries in the neck and in the brain. So the what we call classic Moyamoya, it actually affects the internal carotid arteries. Okay, so what the disease does is it narrows and hardens arteries in various parts of the brain, and the response that the brain does it can happen in other parts of the body too, but the response is that there will be smaller arteries that will grow up around the narrowing. Okay, so what these arteries do, especially for the brain, I mean, the brain, no brain, you're dead, right? So the brain is starved for oxygen, and so it does what it needs to survive. And so the body reacts by growing what we call collateral vessels around the narrowing, and this looks like a puff of smoke on an angiogram. Moyamoya is a Japanese term or word that means puff of smoke. And the reason it's called Moyamoya is because Japanese doctors were the first to diagnose it. And it's very prevalent in the Asian population as a hereditary disease. And so I want to say it's 1 in 100,000 people. That's the statistic of how many disease affects. Let's see, what else? Okay, so basically there are 6 stages of Moyamoya disease. It's called the Suzuki stages. And the vast majority of diagnoses is in stage 3. Stage 3 is when the collateral vessels are visible on imaging. So, and the different kinds of imaging that there's the CT scan, and there's 2 different types of CT scans. One is the CTA and one is the PET scan. And the PET scan is when they use contrast to go through the brain and to see the arteries better. MRI is the next level, and this is so this kind of a scan, you can actually see areas of the brain that are affected by the arteries. And you can also do another type of a study where they use diamox to kind of stress the arteries, and so you can see more mapping of the arteries and how blood flow is affecting the brain. And then the third one, and this is the one that will definitely confirm a diagnosis of Moyamoya, and that's the cerebral. It's an arteriogram, or sometimes we call it an angiogram. Same thing. So what they do is, this is kind of a surgical procedure, because they do a contrast and they go into an artery, either in the wrist or in the groin, and they map the arteries, and they can see all the littlest arteries that are in the brain. So all of the collaterals will light up and areas where there's blockages, you can't see any of the arteries past it. And which is, you know, it's mind-blowing for me anyway. And so basically those are the three types of imaging that they do for Moyamoya. Okay. So usually in the case of Moyamoya, and the diagnosis, like I said, a lot of times the diagnosis is during stage 3. It's caught on imaging first, or it's because someone had a TIA or a stroke. Moyamoya does cause strokes because it's narrowing, it's starving the brain, and sometimes there's a time when the brain is so starved for oxygen that you have what's called a TIA, or a mini stroke, basically. And it doesn't cause any damage, but you have deficits for a short period of time, usually a few minutes to a few hours to a whole day. And so one side of the body is usually weaker than another. There might be some facial droop, the eye and the mouth, and sometimes there's a hard time speaking and communicating, understanding, all these symptoms that you have with a stroke, you can have with a TIA, but the TIA will resolve. It'll get better and it'll go away. But a stroke is permanent, and what I told you about an MRI, strokes will show up on an MRI. They can also show up on a CT scan, but they can see differently on an MRI where the stroke is exactly, and where what it's affecting. So anyway, in fact, I had a stroke and I don't even know when I had it. I don't seem to have any deficits from it. It's in a part of the brain that isn't like a major portion of the brain, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, it's weird. I did learn that you can have what's called a silent stroke, and that's what it was, a silent stroke, because it showed up on my imaging, but no clue when it happened. It had to happen before 2018, because that's when I had my first MRI. So, yeah, there you go. Sorry, my eyes are watering a little bit. Allergies. Okay, so I talked about those things. Okay, so treatment for Moyamoya. There's different kinds of treatment, but the most important treatment is surgery. There's no cure for the disease, but they can do things to help improve blood flow. So, so what they can do is different kinds of bypasses. So there's a direct bypass, there's an indirect bypass, and so it depends on the severity of the disease. Usually, if it's in the internal carotid artery, they'll do a direct bypass, or if it's in the middle cerebral artery, they can do a direct bypass. It's harder to do a bypass in the anterior region because that's the front of the brain, or the posterior region is the back of the brain, but they can do an indirect bypass. So if the urgency of like having a stroke is like you have time, then they do an indirect bypass. And I had that kind. And so what they do there is they just take an artery from the scalp and they cut open a hole. I had this done on the left side. And they lay the artery on the brain and then they close that up. And so it goes in under the scalp and out. And it will grow new arteries on top of the brain, which is great because mine has done a good job of growing. So anyway, so they can do that. They can do what's called burr holes. So in fact, my next surgery, which I'm having in July, is going to be a burr hole surgery. And so what they do is they just cut a little, like nickel size, she said, hole in the skull, and they remove that piece, and they don't put it back in. They just take it out. And then so then what happens there is that the arteries from the scalp will grow into the hole and around on the surface of the brain. So she's going to do two. She's going to do one on this side and one over here around the vascularization that I already have. And the reason they're doing that is because I have a blood flow delay, and the delay is causing TIA symptoms. And I actually went to the hospital a few weeks ago with a TIA, and I was in the hospital for overnight for observation, and then I went home. So anyway, so they can do those kinds of surgeries. There's another one that they can do, and it involves I forget what they call it, but there's a piece of the brain. It's called the dura mater. It's on top of the brain, and they can kind of give it a flip. And then from there, the arteries will grow from that piece that they flip. So it's kind of interesting what they can do. There's a couple of others, but I don't remember what they're called or how they do those. But anyway, those are some things that can be done. All right, so average age of diagnosis, when it's a hereditary condition, then it'll show up in children. So from the age of birth to 5 years old, they can be diagnosed with it. And they're doing research to try to catch it as early as possible before the child has a stroke. So, because a lot of them, if they're young, they can't tell you that they're having headaches and having, these different symptoms. It's hard to see them, but it does happen. And so, and then they do all the same surgeries on children that they do on adults. Now, adults are usually diagnosed between the ages of 35 to 50, I think it is. Or is it 30 to 40? It's in midlife. Okay, so I was diagnosed at age 47. So it's, it was a midlife thing. Usually when that happens is because of some, like, it's a secondary condition to something else. So for me, I have hereditary spherocytosis anemia. And so my Moyamoya is secondary to that condition that I have. People with brain tumors who go through chemotherapy can get it. Any kind of traumatic brain injury, they can develop that one. Like if there's a venous malformation in the brain, then it can be developed from that. There's a lot of other ones, but those are some of the main ones that, you know, people can be diagnosed with Moyamoya from. Anyway, so it could still be hereditary if you're diagnosed in midlife, because, you know, it just didn't show up. You didn't have a stroke until later. Now you've got symptoms or whatever, and you've got migraines and stuff like that. So anyway. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. And and I hope that that was helpful for you. There's lots of information available that you can find if you just Google Moyamoya disease. There's different places where you can find the information. The more detailed information that I have found for Moyamoya, beyond the basic information that's out there for the public, is at ePain Assist. If you Google that, you'll find it. And they not only go into the basics like what I told you, they also talk about things like lifestyle and more in-depth symptoms that are beyond the general symptoms, and like life expectancy and things like that. They go into more detail. They have various articles on that. So that's a place that you can go to find more information. Okay? Alrighty. Again, I'm going to let you go. And please like and subscribe to my channel. This will be put on YouTube. You can find me there. You can either, you can look at my name and find me, or you could Google my name with Moyamoya or Moyamoya Mom, and you can find me. Okay? Alrighty. So I will talk to you later. Okay? Bye.